and happy Saturday. This is Saturday, July 9th, 2022, 7 p.m. Central. I want to say hi to everybody that's out there. We'll take a look at the chat here and see who's here shortly. But if you need IT consulting, head over to williehowe.com. If you just want to send us a message, I'll show you a message that somebody sent that I shared with a couple other people. But if you need to reach out for anything, go ahead and head on over there. And hope everybody's doing well. You're probably wondering why I'm wearing a jacket. It's cold in one little section of the house. All right, 8 people in, 5 likes. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's head on over to the comments. JH, good evening. David, Grishko, good evening. Roger, CH, Zach, and Zach. 2 Zachs in a row. Good evening, everybody. So, let's see. I have a picture here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, it's from our, so I don't take screenshots of this stuff and bellyache. There are some people who go on and bellyache and make all kinds of deals out of this. I thought this was actually kind of funny. Hey, my mom's here. Good evening, mother. James. See ya, bro. Hey, New Zealand. Harrison, greeting. So, but I thought this one was particularly funny, so I thought I would give it a share real quick. So I received this. I don't know if you can see this or not. This came through our contact form. So somebody watched one of the AC Loco setup videos. Good morning, James, an admin engineer. And they spent the time to go out and fill out the contact form. And you can see company name. So they didn't get what they wanted from the video, apparently. Contact name, WTF Willis, brotato@gmail.com. And then the message is how to set up an AC NanoStation logo. Let's dive in. Here we have the NanoStation setup. So good luck deriving value from this video. And then, so this, I just thought this was funny that they would waste the time to go ahead and fill it out. It actually, I shared this. It cracks me up. It actually cracks me up. And it's something good to reflect on, everybody, with this evening. I hope you're having a beverage of your choice. What am I drinking tonight? This is Chattanooga Whiskey 91, so it's 91 proof. If you're drinking adult beverages, drink responsibly. This is what I'm having tonight. And while we chat, hey, Danny. So, cheers to whatever you, just being alive, right? All right, let's go ahead and open up the chat for questions. I've got one for you. If you're watching this now, maybe you're somebody that's watching the replay that's going to be on YouTube. I think I'm going to use SurveyMonkey for this. I'm not sure. I've been kind of thinking about this. It's one of those things like, you have shower thoughts, right? Like, I want to do several different network build videos, but I think I want to put a SurveyMonkey together and put it out for all of you to tell me which components you want to see, right? So do you want to see all Unifi? Do you want to see Unifi mixed with Netgear, mixed with TP-Link, mixed with Juniper, mixed with Cisco, mixed with whatever, name manufacturer? I'm thinking that those videos could be, kind of helpful to folks. So let me know what you think over in the comments about that. Here's a question. What happened to your Discord? So that's a great question. So I did have a Discord, and we decided to end it because I never spent any time there. I did have a good group, 2 or 3 people who would kind of field questions and things like that. But I didn't feel like people were really getting a good value out of it. So we're looking at forums. But the thing is, anything that we put together, in order for it to be successful, has to be curated, has to be managed. And that takes that takes time, right? So it's like, where do you steal the time from to do that? Or if it becomes something that like affiliate links pay enough for, do you pay somebody to moderate it? But yeah, the Discord is gone for now. JH says, go with some of the smaller brands. Juniper and Cisco are done all the time. I haven't really seen too many Juniper videos. The videos that I saw for Juniper or that I've seen are a lot of running over the study material for some of the exams. So if there's somebody else out there creating Juniper videos, I haven't been paying attention to that. Maybe I have to take another look. Harrison says Sonic Wall and USG. So here's the thing, right? So I've seen several videos about, using like pfSense with a UDM, and I'm just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. There's no reason to stick pfSense in front of a UDM or even behind it. It's ludicrous. First of all, likely you're creating double NAT. And with the current state of the firmware and with Unifi, why are you doing it? Because somebody on YouTube told you to? The thing is, what Ubiquiti is good at is a lot of these things work that people don't think work, but they've changed their vernacular, right? And people don't want to learn in and or they don't want to jump in and learn it or anything like that. So they just say that, no, the Unifi gateways can't do this. They can't do this. They can't do this. When in reality, the Unifi gateways can do quite a bit of what your NetGate box can do. Now, high availability is coming to the Unifi security gateways. It's just not there yet. After that, if they added dynamic routing protocols, what would you need pfSense for? What would you need OpenSense for, right? Just because you don't want to run the Ubiquiti stuff? Okay, that's cool. And it makes sense for some people. But to say that some of the stuff doesn't work when it does, it's just not what you're used to hearing it called. And Ubiquiti's good at that, right? Changing the vernacular. So, Harrison, when you said Sonic Wall and USG, in my mind, I'm like, okay, somebody wants to stick a Sonic Wall in front of a USG, and I don't know if that's what you meant or not, but if you wanted to clarify that a little bit. Hey, Brian! All right, David J. says, greetings. Do you think the UDR is a good home user semi-pro device? 3 to 4 VLANs? Absolutely, I do. 100%. So, here's UDR currently unplugged. And, oh yeah, here's the UDR next to the bottle of Chattanooga 91. So similar size. Maybe I should build a router into that bottle of whiskey. So here is the UDR. This was on my list of videos to do. And then here's the Dream Machine. And, side by side, there's very little difference. Now, from behind, I can tell you the dome, the top part, where the AP lives, on the, there may not be any differences, especially if we go back and look at the spec sheet. But the one thing is the Dream Machine that I have has that like soft velvety feel to it, so it like collects dust like it's going out of style. And my office and my lab are both downstairs, and so there's a little bit more dust downstairs. So I'm constantly wiping these things off. But the UDR is a little bit more of a slick. I don't know if I can get if you can see it in there. So you can see the reflection of the lights off of the top of the UDR, and you can see that the UDM is not, there's no reflection happening there, right? So, yeah, but these are both good devices for smaller deployments, in my opinion. So yes, David J, absolutely. Ivan says, hello from Aruba. Hey, Ivan. JH says, I rarely see Aruba vids or Dell. Yeah, and I've dealt with Dell switches. In fact, Tim's probably got a couple that I could throw in the rack. And so maybe we'll do some Dell videos. I don't know. I don't know how much of a I don't know how much of a need there is, but we'll see. Danny says best of breed for SMB where cost is a key component. Absolutely. And that's kind of what I was thinking, right? Like, so does somebody want, an edge router and then Netgear switches and maybe Unifi APs or Grandstream APs, right? Do you need that heterogeneous? That's not the right word. If everything's the same, is it a, I'm trying to think. I think I messed the word up. Anyway, scratch that. Where you've got everything that's in that single pane of glass. Not everybody needs that. Not everybody wants that. So JH says, my current issue is that I can't get fast enough line speed no matter the cost. And I'm assuming you mean internet. Harrison says, to clarify specifically VPNs in different modes. We'll have to you could email me about that, Harrison, and clarify that a little bit more. Zach says MicroTik would be interesting. MicroTik makes great stuff. The problem is that MicroTik makes you learn. And so you don't see, there's a couple good YouTube channels of MicroTik, but a lot of the creators that are looking, at networking stuff, they're not doing MicroTik. So I've got a couple MicroTik videos. I should do some more. But you're not going to see Network Chuck. If he ever did a MicroTik video, I'd fall out of my chair. So Bill says Snort is much better than what Unifi is using in my opinion. So if you're talking about on the PF Sense, most of your videos out there are going to recommend Circata. There are a couple Snort videos out there, but hey, Sean. And then JH kiddingly says, if you wrap the UDR in foil, it'll help with the dust. That's hilarious. Roger says, had two UDMs this past month that I switched ISPs on. Both had screwy performance issues afterwards. Backup, restore, didn't fix the issues. Had to do a full factory reset, rebuild. That is weird, Roger, for sure. And Brian, yes, homogeneous. That is the word that I was looking for. But back to Roger's issue. One UDM had speed issues, horrible. The other had some websites that wouldn't load, but speed tests were full performance. That's interesting. Was there something stuck somewhere that we can't see? I don't know. At first, my first go-to, and JH, correct me if you think I'm thinking about this wrong, but at first when you tell me that you switched ISPs, right? So here's what I imagine. You're running this, more particularly, more to the point, you said the UDM. So you're running this. Let's say you got Comcast coming in, you're running it, and then you switch the WAN port. And you switch that to the other provider. My first thing is okay, do we have an ARP, some sort of an ARP issue going on? Technically you shouldn't. I mean, if you're doing different ISPs, right, then maybe I wouldn't think that that's what it would be, because different ISPs, different MAC addresses, different IP addresses. So, I mean, but I don't know, things are funny, right? So was it same ISP? Let's see. You switched ISPs, so you completely switched ISPs, right? JH says, network, I'm running at 800 gig, and it's tapped out. 800 gig is, 800 gigs fast. That's fast. Harrison said, I had an Aruba reseller tell me that the Aruba controller can adopt my existing Unifi access points. Okay, so Harrison, actually, yes. Aruba, there are a couple platforms out there that can use other manufacturers' access points, and I believe, there's JH just hopped in there and said he is right. Yeah, so that is one of the things about that Aruba controller, is it can work with other APs, and it's absolutely amazing. However, JH, can you put in the comments what the price tag on that product looks like? I can only imagine that it's tens of thousands of dollars, I'm sure. So Roger says he upgraded from cable to fiber, and that's when he had the problems. Yes, completely different ISPs. I hadn't experienced issues doing this before with other upgrades. That's definitely interesting. Yeah, JH, what's the name of the other? ClearPass is the name of the other software, and that's how they can do captive portals. They can do guest Wi-Fi. They can do all kinds of cool stuff with ClearPass. And I think it's NAC as well. Alan Owen says, hi, Willie from Australia. I hear you on the UDM stuff. I had a USG once upon a time, ditched it for PF-Sense. A little ago, I went to the UDM Pro. It does everything I need, and it is getting better. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the UXG Pro, a friend and a customer of mine, he's in Texas, and it's about all I can tell you. He's in a sensitive line of work. Last year, we switched him over to Protectly's running OpenSense. The things were working fine, but he wanted to have some things done. And I said, look, I know we just put these in. I think you can either hang on to them for failover, in case, something dies, or you could put them on eBay and you could sell them. We just finished this morning at 6 a.m. Central Time. We just finished switching his second site over to the UXG Pro, and he is very excited to have everything back in that single pane of glass, and everything just worked. And in fact, the USG settings were still in there, and so once we adopted it, and I mean, if you haven't seen how fast the UXG Pro or UDM provisions changes, it is lightning fast. The UXG Pro is crazy fast. So we are recommending the UXG Pro. I am at this point recommending it unless you unless you need dynamic routing protocols or high availability. I'm recommending the UXG Pro, even for smaller sites. It's $4.99. So, and that is if you don't need the all-in-one controller, right? If you've got multiple sites. Excuse me, and you're swapping out a USG, go with the UXG Pro. If you've got one-off sites, or smaller sites, UDR all the way. At this point, these things don't do anything that the other, except those dynamic routing and yeah. So yeah, JH says $80K starting for Airwave. So yeah, it's expensive software, and ClearPass does all the authentication stuff. Roger says, "Are you still looking for cell phones?" Yes. In fact, TVJ is collecting some, and he's going to send some over. So I am still looking for cell phones so that we can do testing with lots of clients connected to APs. Sia Bro says, waiting for the UDM Pro SE to become available in New Zealand. Excuse me. Then I'll upgrade from the USG and also upgrade to 2 or 4 gig fiber internet. If I said that I didn't have internet speed envy right there, I would totally be lying. Now, I do have gig down and then 50 up. And I consult with my ISP. So right now I don't get a bill. So I have absolutely nothing to complain about. Things are great there. But man, 2 gig, 4 gig. In New Zealand, do you have data caps? Do they spy on you, see what you're surfing with your 4 gig? JH says, I gotta have at least OSPF. Yeah, OSPF is a great routing protocol. Who was it? I just read something, or somebody did something, posted something on Facebook where they were running IBGP. So on 1 gig down, you've got a 500 meg upload. That's pretty good. So my old ISP that we used to have before we moved a few years ago, it was 1 gig symmetrical. And it was fantastic. No data cap, $74.95 a month. Routable IP address. It was fantastic. I don't know that that's sustainable. but they're still doing it. All right, Prav says, hello, Willie. How's it going? Question around PBXs. Got 2 international sites, and they want a telephony solution. Currently on Zoom phone in one place, but would a pair of Grandstreams be better? Okay, Prav, so this is a great question. I got to do a video around this. I'm getting ready for the training. By the way, if you want to fly to Peoria, Illinois, become a Grandstream certified professional in their unified communications platform, I've got 1 seat left for the training. That's August 1st through the 3rd in Peoria, Illinois. 1 seat left, so reach out. So this is a really great question, Prav. Now, you said there are 2 international sites. Are they in the same country, or are they in different countries? That's the first thing that I would ask, because that's going to change some of the setup. But probably what I'm going to do in this situation, Prav, is I'm going to put a Grandstream UCM at each location. And then what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to use, if Telnex is available, I'm going to use Telnex for this specific set of SIP trunks. I'm going to use Telnex. A couple of advantages to Telnex. It's really inexpensive. They have great support. And what you do when you start getting more people on Telnex, especially if you have companies that work together, there's a couple different ways to do this. You could, or if you have Telnex and you've got 2 sites and they call each other through their Telnex trunks, the calls are free. So Telnex to Telnex customers are free. But if you've got 2 customers, different countries, now what's really cool is, I've not done this internationally, but I've done this in the United States, right? So, but for you, let's say, Prav, you go ahead and you put a Grandstream UCM at each location. Now, you could do a couple different things. So go ahead and throw Telnex on as the SIP provider for the outside world. Now, excuse me, one thing that you could do is you could put an encrypted SIP trunk between the 2 devices so that you don't have to have a VPN, but that it would also be secure. Or you could put a VPN between them and then just have, a SIP trunk between them. But here's the really cool thing that you can do is you can get into least cost routing, right? So let's say that from country A, it costs you through Telnex 5 cents a minute to call country B. Now you're calling the country, you're not calling your other company, because that's a Telnex to Telnex call, and that's going to be free. Or even, let's say, calling from the other, from site B, it's only 2 cents. Well, you can do least cost routing, right? So once you know where what your cost centers are, you can actually route phone calls through the PBX network. And this is not uncommon. This happens a lot here in the States. I've been involved in a lot of this for sure. And it's called least cost routing, right? So depending on where I'm calling, wherever it is the cheapest to call those area codes from, we're going to route through our network to that PBX and out of that connection. So it was a lot more common when there was more PRIs and more POTS lines, but you can still do least cost routing right now. Let's see here. Cliff says, I am getting ready to upgrade to AT&T Fiber 5 gig. Whew. Harrison, I am glad that you learned something on every one of the streams. I appreciate that. Let's see. So if I were to get 5 gig fiber, I have the UXG. I also have the UDM Pro and the UDM SE. So if I was running IDS IPS, I would be able to take advantage of all 5 gigs of that. So with all IDS IPS, country blocking, DPI, all that stuff turned on a UDM Pro, UXG Pro, or the UDM SE, we should get that 5 gig throughput even with those services enabled. Cliff says he dumped Edge and he's running a custom-built OpenSense router that's 10 gig capable. So if you are doing OpenSense has some really nice appliances, and they do have SFP Plus ports. And I don't think they can do 25 gig, but they can definitely do 10 gig. And then I just saw on their website they released some appliances that have 2.5 gig ports, so that's exciting. JH says, most people don't use their full speed at home. Most people don't. You are correct. But I will tell you that every day I saturate the upload, and we are consistently using about 500 meg down. So, and we're not downloading Linux ISOs either. I mean, that's just from we've just got a glut of devices and a glut of things happening. And as houses and people and cars and properties become more interconnected, you're going to see those data rates. I believe we'll see those data rates continue to rise. Let's see. Cliff can do 10 gig all over. And JH says, I see a ton of people pay a ton more for faster speed, but they are only ever going to use, say, 300 meg, but pay for 1 gig. Absolutely. But that's a beautiful thing, right? And I actually had an argument about 5 or 6 years ago where there was a WISP operator that was like, I am never going to provide 500 meg connections. I think it was 500 meg at the time. You know, my customers, they don't need over 40 gig or 40 meg. They don't even need 100 meg. And this guy was just like, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. But what's going to happen is that's what the customer wants it. And they're going to give you their hard-earned money for that product, right? So guess what? If you're not going to provide it, they're going to go somewhere who can and who will. And that happens, right? So I did a video a few months ago asking, or we were talking about how much internet you need at home, right? And so we were talking about Zoom. We were talking about 4K streaming, you know, and so, but a lot of times what happens with a streaming service is you buffer a lot up front, right? So you get this big burst of data up front, and then you don't get it for a little while longer. You also see other things like Netflix has CDN servers, so they actually send caching servers out to ISPs once they meet those qualifications. And what that does is then your most popular content is stored on that box at your ISP, not necessarily your most popular content, but Netflix's most popular content. And then you pull from that box that's actually at your ISP instead of pulling right from Netflix, main storage. But yeah, I mean, people will pay for the faster speeds whether they're using it or not. It's a $10 sandwich, right? So I could bring you out 2 identical hamburgers, and if the price tag on one is $10 and the other one is $3, more people are going to tell you the $10 burger tastes better because it's $10. So it's got to be better, right? It's perceived value. And when we look at what we charge for services, we also have this same perceived value issue. I had a customer at one time was like the 25th biggest realtor in the country. And because we were only charging $60 an hour whenever there was a network problem, it was our fault because we were only charging $60 an hour. Well, the MSP he used was charging like $120 an hour. So it couldn't be anything on the computers, you know. And so started charging him full rates with everybody else, $150. And guess what? No calls, network runs fine. Brav says, thanks. Yep, we are using Telnex already. They're awesome. Your approach was one of my solution options. Didn't know if there was another option. Thanks. So here's the thing, right? And I got to do this video still. But when I do it, there's like no taking this video back. And it's different PBX's heads up, right? It will be in the ether, so to speak. So for me, people need to be able to own things, right? Companies need to be able to own things. And we're heading down a path with some things where you're never going to be able to own it. There's always going to be some strings attached. Everything's going to be as a service. And we've got to change that mindset. The only people that get rich from that are the companies. Now, I'm not against a company making $1 bazillion. If that's what you can do and you're doing it legally and ethically and morally, awesome. But not people not being able to own things, what that does is that keeps financially disadvantaged people financially disadvantaged, right? Because they always just then have to keep paying out. How does that relate back to PBXs? Well, here's the thing about a PBX, right? This is 2022. 2 months ago, I turned off the last PRI that I hope to ever manage. I've disconnected T1s at this point, right? So as far as voice goes, unless you've got a special use case, we are getting rid of POTS lines here in the United States. They're going away. And in fact, there's a pretty well-known company that was in charge of lots of POTS lines, and their conversions have sucked. Places have lost phone numbers. Places have lost service. It's bad. But as far as SIP goes, unless you're going to spend a lot of money to be the termination and the origination of those calls, you're going to use a SIP provider, right? So in 2022, why I still do PBX on-prem is because whether your PBX is on-prem or your PBX is in the cloud, your dial tone is coming from the cloud unless you're the provider. And then still you've got to have people peering with you, right? So for me, it doesn't make any sense to have a PBX that I'm paying for in the cloud that if I want to leave and go somewhere else, I may not even own the handsets. I might be renting the handsets. And then I'm at the will and pleasure of the company who's got the cloud-based PBX for my phone numbers, right? So for me, it makes financial sense and it makes logistical and organizational sense to own the PBX because now I can use any provider I want. I can use any phones I want. And the only thing that matters is the dial tone. And then if you use a company like Telnex, guess what? You're in charge of the dial tone. No MSP's in charge of it. No cloud-based PBX providers in charge of it. You are in charge of it. So I will always recommend PBX on-prem. That's just where I'm at, whether it's a software, whether it's in a VM or whether it's, and I will always recommend that you own your own phones. I can show you ROI. There's a company that you're probably, if you watch this channel, you're all familiar with that does cloud PBX. And I can show you where you could buy one of their PBXs, but then you could buy one from us and the ROI would be very, very less than a year based on what you're paying them, right? So yeah. All right, back over to the comments here. PCM says, don't waste your money on the 5 gig. Just get the 1 gig or 2.5. Cliff says, yeah, I'm already 10 gig through my major devices internally. Terry Johnson, I hope you're having a great night. I am absolutely having a great night. There's Bob Carpenter. Bob, I missed you, buddy. JH says, oversubscription is the name of the game for ISPs. Yeah, and when I was an ISP, so I was the first dial-up internet company in the prefix that I lived in when I was 15 years old. And our ratio was 8-to-1. So for every one modem that I had 8 customers. And when I started out, I had a 256K at a fractional T1. And never ran out of internet bandwidth. But before we sold, we did start getting busy signals because internet was just getting more and more popular. So let's see. David Grishko says, perceived value is very important. 100% it is. Bob Carpenter says, there's 51 people watching and only 17 likes. Smash that like button. Yes, Bob is correct. JH says, I can't do SaaS. About 50% of my systems are completely air-gapped. 100%. And people don't understand it. JH, but the thing is, you and I, the salesmen, they know who to talk to. They know what to say. And then when the honeymoon period's over, then people find out what the cost of the cloud is. And security is just one of the many facets you got to watch out for. Bob says these companies need to realize that it's customer as a service too. If you stink, we won't use you. Yeah, and now with Yelp and all these online places where people can go, I see people go on Twitter and they'll blow up a place where they think that they got wronged, and that gets the companies to respond. And yeah. Sean says there are many options for PBX. Sean Wood's in the house. There are many options for PBX solutions. I have multiple PBXs virtualized in the cloud with links going through their backbone and peered. That solution is rock stable for you. Yeah. And if that is how you are doing it, that's how you're selling it, and it works for you, that's awesome. Don't shove square pegs in round holes. JH says, I do PBX on-prem, so the room-to-room calls still work if the internet goes off. That too, if you're doing overhead paging, you have alerting devices, all of these things. Absolutely. Absolutely. Brian says, I call people on Teams. Yeah, I know a municipality that wants to move off of a regular PBX and move their phone numbers to Teams. And I think that is going to be one of the biggest mistakes that they are going to make, is to move their phones, their actual phone system, into Teams. So I would say that voice with Microsoft is kind of like how people joke with Ubiquity about, hey, voice has gone through several iterations at Microsoft. And I personally don't think it's a good idea to move your phones to Microsoft. So, yeah, and Sean agrees that is a solid reason to keep it on-prem. And Sean remembers that when he was a sales engineer, giving that exact reason for having equipment on-prem. Yeah. Yep. Bill Green says, the company I work for has been dealing with that conversation from that company for 9 months, and it's still not done. It's a joke. They blame everything on everyone but themselves. People that have had POTS lines on a farm for 50 years and have to spend $8,000 for a new cable. So, Bill Green, don't know if you know this, but they'll actually ship you a box. I wish I had a dang picture of it, but they'll ship you a box that has a cradle point inside. And then it also has a Grandstream ATA. And out of the ATA, they've got a 66 block, and they'll send this all to you. I've got one. I'll have to take a picture and post it on social media. But yeah, could you imagine if a hospital or a school went completely web-based with their PBXs, or completely cloud-based? What kind of an absolute nightmare that would be? I mean, think about the communication systems inside of a hospital, right? All of the different sensors and safety things that are happening. And in the bathrooms, you got the pull chain next to the toilet. You got one in the shower. I mean, you've got all of these ways for life safety to happen. In my opinion, life safety doesn't belong in the cloud. That's just my opinion. I am on-prem, do no harm first. Sean says he is not a huge fan of Teams calling. The pricing isn't good at all. Their service has been done multiple times this year alone. Yeah, Microsoft did a big raise last year to their Microsoft 365, and it's expensive. It is definitely expensive. And if you're in an industry or an organization that has to meet compliance requirements such as email archiving, litigation hold, things like that, you're going to pay. The other thing that really upsets me about cloud-based providers is that they are treating security like it's an option. Some of these places you can't get MFA unless you pay for a larger package, and they know exactly what they're doing. I'm all about, like I said, I'm all about the markets doing the market things, but at some point you got to ask yourself, when is enough, and when is it, just taking advantage of people? And hopefully people will veer away from those companies that treat security as though it's an a la carte option. Bob says, I've seen third parties selling VoIP for Teams. Wonder if it actually works. Well, there are Grandstream phones that are certified to work with it. Yeah, we can do some level of integration with the PBX. I just don't think it's a good idea. Sean says, also, they don't really want to provide direct support for the service. So that's another thing with Microsoft 365. So we've been working on getting several quotes from several organizations, and we're still waiting to get a quote direct back from Microsoft, but all of the companies who resell Microsoft 365 apparently do your frontline support. And then if they can't help you, then they escalate it to Microsoft. So JH is 100% correct. People could die without phones in a hospital. Absolutely. Bird says, Will, I had an issue with AT&T fiber router. We had to reboot the router when other hardware like battery backups needed to be changed, and the router came back up and blew out one of the Ethernet ports. Whoa. So we've got Sienna is the AT&T fiber router that we use, and AT&T actually provides that. Cody's in the house. Good evening, Cody. Bill says, customer wants internet and 4G cell is expensive. They want the $99 unlimited internet. If you live in a metro area, T-Mobile has unlimited, but not in the rolling hills. Yeah, I can't get the T-Mobile where I'm at, but people 15 miles from here, as the crow flies, can get it, right? So, and I've been talking to people about Starlink. So, Harrison says, one of our donors could not get through to out UCM via Teams. They called from their mobile and worked fine. Yeah, that's, Harrison, there are so many people that, I don't think James is on here, but James and I walk into so many unknown things. We do a lot of Grandstream deployments. That's our number one, but we also do a lot of troubleshooting. So that's the thing, right? I am glad that people can get their hands on this technology inexpensively and can learn it. But, we also get a lot of calls from people who've tried, and we walk into a lot of messes, right? So it's hard to say what happened, who happened, things like that. Prav says, hospitals and emergency service sites must have critical infrastructure on-prem private solutions. Is private LTE overkill for them? Thoughts? So I had a customer in New York, and we actually looked at with Verizon the private LTE, and it would tie in with the FiOS service, and I thought it was great. It was freaking expensive, but I thought it was great that you would have an iPad and a cell phone, and the data connected right back to the private fiber network that you had through Verizon. I think that's brilliant. Let's see. Brian says, I get awesome support from Microsoft on my Office 365. So are you just running Office 365, or are you actually Microsoft 365? Or are you just hosted Exchange? Microsoft has 10,000 licenses for 50,000 different products, and they're all different prices. So, but there's Microsoft 365 now. Where are you at there, Brian? So David says, if you really want to call in Teams, I think 3CX has an add-on for Teams, if I recall. Yeah, 3CX is okay. We fix a lot of those too. Zach says, Rogers' problem yesterday here in Canada even got the 911 service down. So I heard about that, and maybe Cody can comment on that as well. But yeah, like the largest, I think like more than 50% of the internet traffic in Canada, right, goes through Rogers, and they had a huge outage. I didn't read exactly what the problem was, but maybe somebody from Canada can chime in. Yeah. So Brian, we're waiting for a quote directly from Microsoft, but for, the amount of licenses and things that we need, I don't know if they want to take it, if they want to put a partner out there. We're trying to figure all that out. See ya, bro says, we live here in the South Island of New Zealand, and we're lucky that there's an old fiber line going past our gate that we were able to connect to. That's fantastic. Yeah, the licensing with Microsoft, it literally takes an expert. Like companies like CDW, they have people that's all they do is study how the licensing works. So, and there's James. James says Microsoft's team calling can work with tons of PBXs. You need to use a certified SBC to connect to their service. And James has a list of those. This has been a conversation that, we've had going back and forth. Okay, so it looks like Rogers was a BGP issue. Interesting. Sean says, I did demo Zoom, and that service was very promising. My open question is, how is the support? I also looked at WebEx calling, and when I looked at the back end, it took me to the BroadWorks platform I used to support and design for. But then again, Cisco did buy them. So we pulled, that's the thing is, anytime somebody comes to us and they've got these weird providers, we're even pulling people off of VoIP.ms, their interface is like chaotic. That's the way that I'll say. So we pull a lot of people off. We pulled people off of Zoom phones. We've pulled people definitely off of the VoIP.ms. I mean, we send most people over to Telnex. Cody says they haven't said anything, but BGP most likely. So yeah, Cody, looks like people are posting links over, and it is probably BGP. So yeah, BGP. So routing and DNS, huge problems. So I did see an article too that said that Microsoft Azure is having capacity problems. So I don't know if they're not spinning up new racks of equipment fast enough, if they've hit capacity. I just saw that today. So that's definitely interesting. JH says, the only use case I found for Teams VoIP is people who need to keep a desk phone that travel. So, and we use Grandstream Wave, and Grandstream Wave is a great app. It's absolutely a great app. Admin Engineer says, does Telnex offer free text to... So Telnex does do SMS with your numbers. Grandstream does not do SMS in the PBX. They do have you can use your PBX now as an instant messaging server, but they are not, they're not doing SMS. But James has a customer of ours that we work with that is doing it. So if anybody's interested in that, we do kind of have a workaround for that. Joe says, if Starlink is a backup, great performance, but CGNAT is a pain for a few ports that I need open. Yeah, so we use ZeroTier, and we route around the CGNAT. So reach out if you want to learn more about that. Bob says the new it's always DNS for ISPs seems to be it's always BGP. That's the thing, because I mean, people don't realize how fragile this infrastructure is. Like, we tell people, like, the internet is held together by fishing string and Scotch tape. And it's true, because it takes one provider to accidentally mess up BGP, and large portions of the internet try to start routing to places they shouldn't. So, yeah, I do think we need some new it's always BGP. Maybe we'll have those for Wispapalooza. Yep, and JH, Joe, look at a jump server, say on Linode for opening ports. Absolutely. Bob says, have you experimented with ZeroTier or Tailscale for CGNAT tunneling? So I recommend ZeroTier for that. Tailscale seems to have some bandwidth problems. I'm seeing lots of reports that bandwidth performance through Tailscale is not as good as ZeroTier. Also, the OpenSense ZeroTier plugin is trash right now, or it was, and we couldn't get it working properly. So many drop packets. And then we switched over to VMs running, and everything is beautiful. Marlo says, at home, I'm using the iOS-based IPPBX Cisco Communications Manager Express running on an integrated services router 4431. That's fantastic. Bill Green says, Azure is out of IPs. They had to buy some from other countries. Switch is causing issues for me as I have geo-block. Yeah, that's the thing. The geo-blocking, when the blocks of IPs move. Yep. Harry says, I have a problem with Apple devices joining my Wi-Fi network. Get error, cannot join this network. Wi-Fi security is WPA2 Enterprise. Who's your, are you using Unifi? JH says, the internet equals hopes and prayers. Yeah, I mean, you can't log on to an ISP group on Facebook without seeing a picture of a backhoe taking out fiber. I mean, they had people in rural America. I mean, they have bullet holes in fiber. I mean, it's crazy. The internet really is. And like people just, the infrastructure is very, very, very sensitive. Absolutely. So Bob says, remember the BGP error that routed all of Facebook's traffic to some steel mill in Idaho? Yeah. And, we still don't know the whole story there. David says, that's what I do. I have a separate VM that handles routing via ZeroTier. Yeah, and you can actually route really, really well. I have a customer down in Central America. They're health clinics, and they have a major clinic like their main site, and they have a remote clinic, and it's Unifi, but the performance, because of the ISPs, they've got some failover and things. So we literally stuck a Raspberry. How he was able to get Raspberry Pis, I don't know. I didn't ask any questions, but he put a Raspberry Pi on each side. I remoted in, set up ZeroTier, and set up all the routing, and everything works beautifully. And the thing is, the thing that's really attractive about ZeroTier is it flawlessly works through CGNAT, right? So if you've got a cable connection or a fiber connection as your primary, and then you've got LTE or Starlink as your failover, well, as soon as that fails over, it's behind CGNAT. Traditional VPN doesn't work. But if you are using ZeroTier, it takes about 10 seconds for ZeroTier, once that failover happens, to reestablish, and then you're good. It's fantastic. JH says, I had some sharks eat some of my fiber last night. That, I can't compete with that. Admin engineer says, I have a customer who refuses to drop Exchange on-prem for about 10 users. Now they want to use Verizon 5G as their internet behind CGNAT. Yeah. So, Exchange on-prem. So here's the thing that like I said, I'm pro on-prem, right? Here's the thing you got to think about. And I don't know if you know this already, admin engineer, or not, so I'm just going to say it, is that the latest version of Microsoft Exchange, so what is it, Exchange 2022, whatever it is, you can put it on-prem, but you can never own it. It is now in that same cycle. So Microsoft said, sure, people want to run this on-prem, but guess what? We're going to get paid. And so now it is you have to pay yearly. You have to. They switched to that model. You can have it on-prem. So at this point, and here's the other thing that the C-suite, the owners, they have to know. Just because you take that software and you move it over to Microsoft doesn't mean you don't need IT people. You still need, in fact, you may need more IT people, but there's a shared responsibility model, and you have to make sure that management and owners understand that. Because Microsoft doesn't do your backups, they don't do your security. You still have to handle all that. They don't set up mailboxes for you. You're not going to call Microsoft, hey, I need 3 employee mailboxes, blah, blah, blah. No, that's still on you, along with the security and the backups. It's called a shared responsibility model. They handle the infrastructure and the underlying software. Everything else is pretty much on you. DM Ohio, is that Dexter? Have you checked out the Unifi Cloud Controller? I don't believe it supports multiple sites. So I have not fully vetted it yet. So we'll have to see. But I think they've got great pricing. And if they hire some dedicated support people for that product, it could be fantastic. All right, David Grishko says the cool thing with ZeroTier is that you can bond multiple connections and have failover between multiple connections. Yeah, absolutely. JH says, I think they like the EMI that the power relays put off. So I've read some stories about these undersea cables, and they show sharks attacking them, but I've never seen or heard of one break. David says, you can even set up a moon at a local VPS location for zero. Yeah, you can host your own ZeroTier controller. Admin engineer says they are more worried about Microsoft having access to their data. So here's the thing. Unless you are using secure email to everywhere where you deliver email, right? Unless every single one of those are encrypted, people know what you're sending. You can't control the other side. So, I mean, at some point, yeah, they're going to have to, but I get it. Bob says, any experience with clients backing up their O365 with a Synology client? Absolutely. In fact, I have one customer who is in the Chicagoland area. She has 3 mailboxes. She uses Microsoft 360 or Office 365, and we use a Synology on-prem, because even when you have that small package at Microsoft Office 365, you still are using Azure under the hood. So you have access to all those things. You just got to know where to go to get into them. And we back up her entire Office 365 to one Synology and then replicate it to another. JH says, I switched email over from Exchange years ago because I saw that coming. I paid for Proton Mail Pro for my smaller clients. And that makes sense, right? So, and the only thing you can do is you can advise, right? And document that you advised, and then we go on. So we've been coming up on an hour. I want to thank all of you, 65 of you. Make sure you smash that thumbs up button. I'm working on a video tomorrow. I'm hoping to get it released tomorrow. We'll see. I don't know how humid it's going to be outside, but I hope you are absolutely all healthy, all happy. I hope you're awesome. You're being awesome. People are treating you awesome. I hope you have a fantastic Saturday night. If you need anything at all, even if you wanted to treat me like that person did that sent that, that's fine. That's cool. Reach out at williehowe.com. I really do appreciate each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. You know, like, we're over 75,000 subscribers. Absolutely amazing. We're going to do a lab giveaway. I want to thank you for all being here. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.